This video is all about the GFX system. It's not going to be a technical review, but I'm going to take you on a journey and show you why GFX is my system of choice as a studio and street photographer, and specifically my camera of choice, GFX100S II. Right now we're in Brooklyn. We're gonna jump on a train and head into the city where my studio is, and we have a bit of extra time today, so we're gonna take some photos on the way to the studio. Oh yeah, and before I forget, this video is sponsored by Fujifilm. Today, we're working on some images for Red Halftone's latest product launch. These images are going to be used on their social media and website. We set this scene up earlier in the week, so we're going to wrap this one up and then flip it for the next one. My absolute favorite thing about GFX100S II is how versatile it is. On days like today, where I have to bring my camera to the studio and have a bit of extra time, I can turn my commute into a photo walk and use the same camera in the studio. Before GFX, I used to do studio work with my X-H1. It was an awesome camera, but I found that after a while, I started tiling scenes together. I needed more megapixels. With GFX, we're utilizing 100 megapixels, so this is never an issue anymore, even cropping at 40%. And for e-commerce, I can use a heavy crop for the secondary image to show off the product quality, and unless the customer has a really good eye, they might not even be able to tell the difference. The wild thing to me is that when I'm using GFX in the studio versus the street, or vice versa, the main thing that changes is really just the settings. When doing handheld street photography, I am using a mechanical shutter and keeping the ISO very low as long as it's bright out. The shutter is really the main variable because the aperture I typically have close to open because, you know, my favorite lenses are GF55 and GF110, so you gotta take advantage of that bokeh. When I'm in the studio, the setting that I always change first is the shutter. I change from a mechanical to an electronic shutter, and this is because when I'm shooting products, I typically have my shutter speed pretty low, and the second setting that I always change is the aperture. I usually set this to around 8 to 11 depending on what I'm shooting, so I can get more of the product in focus. And just like most modern professional cameras, GFX has a focus stacking feature, which is something I pretty much always use when I'm doing product work. And one of the best things about the GFX system is that if you came from an XF camera beforehand, the menu system is exactly the same. So the only real difference is the size of the camera and the button layout. This focus stack looks pretty solid. I think that's a wrap. Now we're headed to an awesome spot to catch the sunset. Let's hope it's a good one today. We've arrived at Pier 1 in Brooklyn Heights. This is one of my favorite spots to capture the lower skyline of Manhattan, especially at sunset. Sunset photography is really fun, especially when paired with my favorite style of photography, HDR and long exposure. To create photos in this style, all you need is to grab a tripod and some ND filters, and this will pretty much turn any scene into a studio landscape. GFX100S II captures a ton of color and dynamic range in these long exposure photos, and the key here is to take a few exposures to prioritize both the shadows and the highlights in each scene. Or if you're just taking one photo or doing a time lapse, be sure to just expose for the sky, and the GFX should be able to recover the shadows just fine. I stayed in one spot the entire time, and overall, despite this lackluster sunset, I think we got some pretty cool images. This is what I ended up with. My favorite thing about the GFX system is that I can go from the studio to the street, and in either situation, I have a camera that is just unmatched in image quality. My first GFX camera was the GFX100S, and I've taken that on many trips, from street photography in Boston, to Memphis, to Miami, to landscape and nature photography in Hawaii, where I did a bunch of intense hikes with the GFX camera and a few lenses. GFX gear is really rugged and it can handle pretty much anything I throw at it. And another big shout out to Fujifilm. Thanks for sponsoring this video. This collab has been absolutely incredible. This is my camera system of choice, and anytime I'm out taking photos with my GFX100S II, it always feels really magical. So drop a comment below and let me know what your favorite thing is about the GFX system. Or if you're new or thinking about jumping on board, let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to talk in the comments. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you aren't already. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next video.